at Xometry, which is a marketplace for advanced manufacturing. Prior to that, I used to work at a unicorn startup called Turing, and before that, I spent a couple of years in data science management at Indeed, and previously I was an academic for a few years. What interests me currently in this space is that we are observing a very important leap in the AI development generally. So the frameworks around machine learning in different modalities are accelerating to change. We have seen in the space of natural language processing, large language models. We also see different multi-model large models capable of processing vision data, audio data, video data, with capabilities that we never observed. This opens a new space for opportunities that how we can unlock value for business. And I would like to talk later after the other panelists a little bit more that how new space opportunities opened up. While there are a lot of anxieties with any new change in the space, I think it's also an opportune time and a very interesting time to be part of the data analytics, data science space.
Thank you, Emad. How about you, Ankur? Do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about your experience so far?
Yeah. So hey, folks, Ankur here. I head the data team at Turing, which is machine learning, data platforms, analytics, as well as data science teams. Before that, I was at LinkedIn for 9 years, where I led the AI efforts for the ads business at LinkedIn. So as part of our Turing, Turing is like a marketplace of software developers, and we try to place them with clients here in the US. One of the large projects more recently my team is working on is to work with these large LLM companies to help train the model specifically on this data science use cases. So as Emad was pointing out, like the jump we are seeing right now in terms of what the model capabilities are, multimodality coming in as well. It's only getting better and better, and it has a huge impact on all the roles, including all the technical roles. So I'm looking forward to more discussion on how, what other panelists think about data science or impact to data science from these models.
Thank you, Ankur. I guess we can hear from our VC on the panel. Alejandra, would you want to share a little bit about your perspective?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alejandra, or Ale. I'm a principal at B Partners. We're a pre-seed deep tech fund based in San Francisco. I'm originally from Chile, but certainly consider myself a global citizen because I've lived in many different continents at this point. I spend the majority of my time talking to, I guess, like the people I would call future founders. So, you know, folks that are kind of just getting started on the journey. They want someone that they can pressure test their assumptions with, someone that maybe might help them catalyze certain ideas with introductions and whatsoever. And then the other part of the time, I really spend it on what we call human-machine interaction. And that is, I mean, kind of thinking about it through the lens of generative AI, it's everything to do with this new work anatomy and what it means to be human and how we collaborate with machines when they are no longer kind of these like dumb tools that we used to, you know, kind of do something repetitively, but rather they become something that we can collaborate alongside with. So that's kind of like the angle that I bring to the table. And it's sort of, you know, what are some of the interesting ideas that a lot of founders are coming up with in this sort of next generation of AI first companies.
Thank you. And lastly, from Rahul, you want to give us an introduction and your perspective as a startup founder in this space?
Yeah, for sure. Tam, thanks for having me. So I'm Rahul, one of the co-founders and CEO here at Arcwise. So we're basically building a data analyst for non-technical business users inside their current spreadsheet. My background is initially started in finance, did a bit of product and business analysis, and then was at Flexboard, which is a tech freight forwarder, for a handful of years. And when I left, I was running the yield team, which was a bunch of pricing product, analytics, program management. And within my team and myself, we were all pretty analytical, but didn't write too much SQL, weren't data scientists. So we kind of felt the pain with respect to kind of collaboration, getting to insights quickly. I mean, dashboards cut it in some capacity, but sometimes you kind of just like need ad hoc analysis. So we kicked off Arcwise to basically kind of build that bridge between business teams and technical scientists, analysts to get to insights quickly. We've seen a bunch, we've been going for just over 2 years, have seen a bunch of traction in the space, in the spreadsheet space, but also massively in the AI space. So it's just been great to be building in the space and seeing what AI can do specifically for analysts and scientists.
Thank you. I guess we can dive right in of, I guess we can, I'm thinking of it as 2 parts. So first we can talk about the current space, like what everyone has been seeing, some use cases, maybe we can go into like, these are some interesting use cases, the pros and cons of that. And then I guess later on we can talk more about, you know, the future, what will the new tools be like, what the new workflow, what does it mean for analysts to be in the space with the new power. So with that, maybe Emad and Ankur, maybe one of you can jump in. Like, what use cases have you seen that data team have been using Gen AI? My background is also in running data team, leading business analytics in multiple places. And I personally have seen a lot of tools surrounding like helping out the data scientists in the team. So things like, you know, writing SQL, it can help writing SQL better, chat with your data, those kind of things. And I was just wondering from your perspective, Emad and Ankur, are those real use cases? Do your team adopt them? Are those like real problem that you see is helpful to use Gen AI, or do you see something else? Or what do you see that is like the use case that you are using right now that's really good and people are adopting it?
Yeah. Ankur, do you want to go first there?
Yeah, no, go first.
Sure. So I see there are 2 things that happened. One is that I call them transformers. Transformer is not the architecture. The things that are transforming, which are accelerators. Accelerators are things that helps boost productivity. I mean, the capabilities, as you said, you can now, if you have the schema of your data, it's make it very easy to write SQL. Sometimes those head spinning SQLs, maybe writing them is prone to errors. Those things get easier. I've seen both myself and also the team getting more, having higher velocity in developing like code, writing things, even creating efficiency in your code, debugging your code, writing test units. Those things are happening, and there are portion of the community are embracing this, and they are getting this boost in productivity. So it results in a faster iteration in the team. So that's why I call it accelerators. That's one thing, and I think it's going to happen, and it's going to give a boost to productivity. It can be a little bit dangerous for those who do not embrace these new learnings, and they might fall behind. The second thing, like I said, the transformers was to transform the opportunity space. It introduced a new paradigm. So I can give you an example from my current work that we are doing. So a major part that we are doing is we get a part uploaded to our system, which is like an advanced manufacturing CAD file, a 3D file. And we have to decide how you can produce it. It should be laser printed, it should be CNC, it should be what type of manufacturing going to be used for it, and whether it is designed correctly for manufacturing. For example, you can upload a file that it is supposed to be CNC'd, but it is impossible to do it with the machine. So historically, the way that we were people doing, a lot of mathematicians writing these rules to extract these handcrafted features, and then whole set of hierarchical rules to decide whether you can manufacture this piece. Now with this advancement that we can have an understanding, a semantic understanding of the object, and then understanding whether it is proper for. So this is a whole new paradigm. So that's bring of a whole change in a way that the teams are thinking about solving problems. And these might be more major shifts in the way that we have to deal with the data, and the teams who used to be doing things in a certain way need to really learn new skills and new understandings of how to deal with data to solve this new type of problems. So that's the things that I'm currently observing.
So that's a great point. So in addition to, I think, data scientists becoming more productive, I've also seen that it can free up data scientists from some simpler tasks where you get a lot of requests from your partners asking you for some simple data pulls. And a lot of effort in text to SQL is trying to automate. I think Rahul and team probably are going along the same dimension. There are even role specific functionalities people are trying to teach the model. So functional analyst is speak a different language than marketing analyst and somebody else. So not only text to SQL generic, but also certain specific vertical specific knowledge is trying to be imparted to the models. In addition to that, I also see people trying to build on the multimodal capabilities where somebody can upload a chart and ask questions on it. And the models behind the scenes either do OCR or they've just learned how to index the image into an embedding, which then helps you helps you answer questions about the data which is being depicted there. So those are the two somewhat upcoming or like which will only get better and will displace some of the new tasks. But in my mind, like that'll create more bandwidth for the data scientists to do richer work, think of more complex problems where the model doesn't do well today.
Yeah, thanks. Since you brought this up, do you think with these kind of tools, does it mean that the data science team in the future will be different from what we see as data science team right now? And in particular, does it mean like you think that data scientists will do different things? And I guess the analogy is we heard a lot about software engineering. Like everyone's saying that software engineering is changing. And for certain tasks, people say that you don't even need a software engineer right now. If you just have some knowledge, you can just go and code with cloud or ChatGPT. Do you think it's the same case with the data space, like data engineering, data scientists, and analytics in general?
I want to build up on a very good point that Onkar said. So actually, data scientists are getting more headspace to focus on bigger problems that matter for business to unlock value instead of getting to do the manual work of, pulling data or getting these basic things in place. I think there are enough problems in the complex business context that at the same level of, I don't think you need a smaller team, but you might be able to solve larger problems. I always use this example that because I used to be an architect. So 1,000 years ago, we didn't have any of the machinery, but people were designing magnificent buildings. Nowadays, we have all the machinery, we can produce more buildings, but the quality it's what matters and makes something last. So I think there are more opportunities for producing higher quality, magnificent work or beginning, unlocking value for the business in that sense.
Yeah, I think the roles will definitely change, but for all the productivity tools which have been developed in the last 20 years or whatever time frame you choose, we are not reduced the number of hours we work as humans. We still work 50, 60 hours. So I think there will always be newer roles. More will be asked at the same time. And we just have to adapt, I think. So it won't be, maybe the data scientists as today will not exist or will be smaller. So just like computers of when they remember that movie from Hidden Figure, they were humans who were called computers. Now nobody has that job anymore, but there are different jobs and we are all still working more than 40, 50 hours. So that is how I think like the roles will evolve, but there will still be bigger and larger and more problems to solve versus like us working fewer hours, or there will be fewer jobs in the world.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I think there's kind of like two things that quickly come to mind with that question. One is like, if you think about what happened with designers and software developers, it's kind of like a similar example where essentially you had, software developers on one side, designers on the other, and then with sort of like supercharged tooling, you kind of get this category of folks that maybe they have a design background, but they know enough about coding to be dangerous, and with the tooling, they can sort of get to that next level. And then you kind of get like, so that gets kind of like merged in the middle, and then you get the tails that become even more specialized in what they do. So, you know, you kind of get like the hardcore developer and the hardcore designer on the other side. And then the other piece of this is like so many companies out there just don't have or haven't had the ability to really leverage the amount of data that they're generating and that they're capturing. Because frankly, like they just didn't have $1 million to build a whole, you know, data and machine learning team, and now they are able to do that. And frankly, if they don't, like they're just going to stay behind, and it's almost going to become a necessity. So I agree with the fact that this is only going to generate actually more demand for people that have this skill set, and ideally don't just have like the traditional, you know, data management skill set, but also folks that have incorporated the new, like the usage of these new tools to their skill set and to their tool belt. Like that's going to be incredibly valuable in both traditional settings as well as companies that, again, just didn't have the ability to have those resources up until now.
Yeah, and just to like very lightly add here, so a couple of points from my side, just adding to what you've said. I don't know you guys, but like all the roles that I've been in, normally analysts and scientists have many, many more questions than time to answer them. So I think if anything is going to help, maybe move some of the questions to the business side, but also let business teams and the analysts and scientists collaborate in one space. There's been this kind of technical barrier which has stopped people from, you have to throw it over to somebody else. And I think this kind of opens up a medium where both parties can kind of work together and increase the speed. One other point to make, I think there will be another kind of work that kind of evolves here, like data quality, documentation, testing, question curation is really important for high accuracy text to SQL in the analytics space. And I think there will start to be more of a focus of the data teams on that. I think we had a little bit a couple of years ago, but I think this kind of AI wave will help and also like add structure and eyes on that process.
Thanks for sharing. Maybe Rahul, would you mind like sharing a little bit more on that of like why suddenly data quality become more important, and what do you think people, or what are some solutions there, given that that's like it shine the importance of like good data in, good data out.
Yeah, for sure. So again, we try to deploy AI analysts across big businesses. So a lot of the issues that we kind of see is accuracy is really important, right? And there's two things about that. One is the actual accuracy of the text to SQL. If people don't trust what's coming out of it, you can't give an incorrect table for a financial report, like revenue V3 may be the wrong table to use. So having the right metadata and metrics backing the text to SQL is really important. In many businesses, you already kind of have that. In some businesses, you don't. And also, it's an evolving process for documentation. The second critical thing that we've kind of seen is a lot of the AI stuff's never going to get to 100%, or maybe in the future, not right now. So you really need a medium in which when you push the SQL query, I've asked like, what happened with revenue last week, and it's given me a table. If it is incorrect, the non-technical individual can correct it. So the way we kind of look at that is if you're like spitting out a table, which is a certain metric, we give the user the ability to adjust it via a pivot. And that pivot is like kind of code converted to SQL, but it gives like the business user the ability to adjust in the medium that they're used to. So yeah, those are the two things how we kind of think about accuracy and really, I would say, auditability of the query that comes out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. From my own experience, I think that's very important because we were trying to deploy some of these like chat with your data tool. And if we don't have the existing data already good in place, you know, which table is revenue, which table is, you know, profit. If you have the bad data coming in, then you get the bad data coming out and you will get the same problem. It cannot, like Emad mentioned earlier, you cannot accelerate based on bad data. So we still have the same problem as before, which is you need good data quality. Yeah, so on this one question that I think a lot of people, including myself, have is that, like, I guess we are in kind of like transition period. So we have things that make us faster as data scientists, and there's some that transform the existing workflow. But we see more, or in my experience, we see more of like, this will help the analyst be faster. This will, instead of asking an analyst, you can ask the bot or the AI to answer the questions. But do you think there will be fundamental change in the space of, like we still imagine it in terms of like we have data, we have clean data, then AI will make something out of it. But do you think that workflow will change in the future? Of like maybe even on the data quality piece, you can have bad data and it somehow can know which part is bad. It can be intelligent enough that you don't have to worry too much about your data quality, or just before, like, we have structured data, unstructured data, and it can look in both spaces. Will there be anything that you think it will fundamentally change the way we work, and it just like very different from how we are working right now? Alejandra, do you want to give your perspective, as you are seeing a lot of like ideas from a lot of different places on that?
Yeah, sure. And I think that's something that we're actually actively looking at. We have a company in the portfolio that started out by just providing kind of a serverless model deployment tool for companies that don't have a data science team internally. But then they quickly ran into the same problem that kind of previous generations of MLOps companies ran into, which was like, everyone has data in different, everyone has different types of data, they label it differently, and just like a series of issues that are very, very particular to every single company, to every single enterprise. And so what they've developed at this point, and it's working and it's incredibly accurate actually, is an agent that basically does all of the data cleaning, labeling, and even like data translation. And so that way they can actually provide a tool that is out of the box, but that can be customized, making like the entire thing scalable, which again was like a big thing that we didn't really see in kind of the previous generation. To your second point, something that I literally had this conversation with the team, I think it was last week, where it's one thing to implement a task that is kind of like a one-off and you just kind of put it on autopilot and you get, the same response, or it's the same query every month or every quarter, whatever it might be, versus something that's more of like a recurring task. So a good example would be an agent that doesn't just train a model, but one that monitors a model, and whenever, it falls underneath a certain accuracy threshold, it goes and retrains the whole thing, and it does that on Rails for you. Again, like, yes, there's still the risk of hallucination or the risk of it not, and the fact that we're kind of like increasing the black box, right? Or I guess like providing more depth of the black box, which is risky. But on the other hand, like, that is a huge, the whole kind of managing data before you can even deploy machine learning, if you can automate as much of that as possible, like, I think it just opens up the possibility for so many companies that just didn't have access to any of that before. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. The other thing that I'm seeing a ton of is, again, given accuracy, given hallucinations, and kind of this thing that happens every time there's kind of like a new technology wave where we overestimate the impact in the short term and we underestimate the impact in the long term. A lot of us thought that this thing would be magic, and frankly, obviously it's not. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies coming up with sort of like hybrid approaches. So maybe if it's kind of like AI search, they're implementing LLMs on the natural language to SQL or whatever it might be, like more kind of trying to understand user intent in that query. But then they're using more traditional deterministic approaches to going and retrieving the right data. And so I don't know if that's going to be what kind of what's sustainable in the long term. I think the models will get better and more accurate, but in the meantime, I'm seeing a lot of these like hacks of a more hybrid, or kind of, you can call it the AI sandwich type of approach, especially in industries where accuracy really, really does matter.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that begs the question on kind of like adoption and investment. So definitely this is a new technology, and I wonder if, do people right now are eager to make investment on it? And that means like changing existing workflow,
Yeah.
like transforming what they are using with something new? Or do you see that people are still on the fence and they may be like still waiting it out and wanting to see, is it a fad? It's just a phase, and we'll come to something else. Emad and Ankur, I know that you work with your team, and also Ankur, you work with clients a lot. What is your perspective on that? Like, what is the level of investment and readiness from the industry right now on, Gen AI tool, especially in the data space?
I think there is some caution, because there is always people want to separate the hype from the real value add that you could have. And there are other concerns about privacy and all, which give people some pause. But I think it's a matter of time before you have to accept the reality. So while people are being cautious, they want to wait and watch. I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah,
Emad,
I think,
anything to add?
yeah, the same observation, I think, as Onkar said, that there's a lot of excitement there, but some of the also legacy companies, or I said legacy companies that do not have cutting edge AI teams, they don't really know how to apply some of these, and that's why you see that most of the boost currently goes to the consulting companies to
Totally.
help them to figure out whether they have a viable solution. And to Alejandra's earlier point, that sometimes you can't get something 90% accurate, but what you need something to be 100% accurate. So we see progress towards what OpenAI just introduced, like, a structured output. So now we get something that 100% follow your schema that you ask it. So if we got there. I think some more deeper work needs to happen, and that's going to be a little bit beneath the surface. For example, when the whole movement with Gen AI happened, self-training was something important, that we had this large corpus of data and we could train these kind of complex models on them without having labeled data per se. So we use this method like mask language modeling and next token prediction and these sort of things. I believe some sort of that paradigm needs to be worked on, in a sense that the models can learn where is your data healthy, and it can consume it for production and making some outputs out of it, and somewhere need to raise red flags for you that further investigation or the hybrid method kick in. So yeah, again, circling back to what Onkar said, I think there's a lot of excitement and at the same time some confusion / cautiousness in the space as well. But I agree also, it's also a matter of time when it's everyone come on board.
And Rahul, is that what you're seeing with your clients as well? Are they happy to jump in as soon as possible, or what's the sentiment there?
Yeah, so I would, yes, I think a lot of people are excited. I feel like there's kind of two camps. There's like the agentic camp that we talked about, and then the Copilot camp. So I think it's important to, like, when we're working with clients, to be clear as to what camp we're firmly in. We work more so in the Copilot camp. I think people are very excited when they actually see value for them. So the way we've kind of looked at it is we focus on a handful of use cases, show direct value across those use cases. And then when clients see that value for a specific use case, then they can kind of expand it out. What we have found hard sometimes is when you get really general, when you're saying, okay, this works for everything. And then sometimes the kind of use cases, it's really hard for people to kind of think about them. So we try to keep like really specific on specific data use cases or a certain set of tables that we know are going to provide high value to them, and then expand out.
Yeah, to add on to that, because we have another company that was struggling with the same point of like, how do I make the demo personalized without necessarily having access to to that potential customer's data? And so what they ended up doing was they would create a synthetic data set for the demo that was like similar or, you know, kind of in the same industry as that potential customer was in. And so that way, even though it wasn't, you know, the full ROI of the solution, it gave the person sitting on the other side like a pretty good understanding of what this tool could do for them. And that turned out to be very powerful.
Very similar to something that we do. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, seeing is always more convincing than like, you know, just hearing about it and imagining what it could be. Yeah, that I wonder, since you know, we have these kind of tools and whatnot, and we touch base a little bit on this question, but you know, as someone who's in this space, what do you think are the most important skill set for, you know, the data team or a data professional? You know, the landscape is changing, the workflow is changing, there are things that can make you faster and whatnot. So from where you are, like what do you think are the important skill set or important thing for a data scientist in the space right now? Like what would make them like really make their career flourish in the future and be adaptable to this new world?
And I think, in my opinion, it's a mindset / skill. And that's we should embrace lifelong learning. I mean, for 100 years in 20th century, we learned that you go to a college, get a degree, and then rest of your life, you're going to be an accountant or you're going to be a lawyer. But what happens now in the 21st century, things are changing so fast that even if you want to continue with what you learned in the 4 year in the college and just keep following your practice, you can't do it anymore. So I think that's the first thing, to be able to adapt to this, that this lifelong learning journey is throughout your career. This is going to happen, and these new frameworks, these new things happening, and you have to keep up with that. On the side of the generative AI, I think literacy about generative AI capabilities and its fundamentals, at least even at the conceptual level, if someone does not want to get a deep grasp of like mathematical foundations, is necessary. And also understanding what are the tools and frameworks out there that can make you effectively embrace and offer solutions for the problem that exists in the space. So that's, I think, are the most important things from my point of view, but I would love to learn what other panel members think.
No, I think Emad covered it. I think you have to be in the know, and you have to, one thing maybe to add is you have to keep trying and stay up to date with what's going on. So you have to keep trying these new tools, even though maybe you don't adopt it as a company, but in your personal capacity, you have to be always trying these things to be aware of what's going on. Don't want to be surprised.
Yeah, I think can't remember who said this a million years ago, or I guess last year, 2022, but AI is not going to take your job. It's someone who knows how to leverage and use AI. And in order to know, frankly, like there are just so many different tools that sometimes it's hard. It's like, how do I know which one's good? How do I know which one isn't? My personal experience has been like, I just try everything. And maybe that's what we're seeing in terms of the numbers, because a lot of these companies have, you know, a lot of excited people at the beginning and they churn out really quickly, because we're still trying to figure out what's useful. Like the ROI of so many of these things is still a big question mark. So, you know, again, sitting on the other side from like an investor POV, because I sort of have this like dual thing where I've built a bunch of stuff for us internally, but then I also invest in companies and I support companies in this space. And on the support side of things, like one of the most important things that we're looking at is usage and why, and like who's coming back every single day, what types of things are they building, and can we get just like more data from those types of experiences? So, and I think that type of customer is the one that's going to get ahead. So that type of user is the one that's going to get ahead. It's someone who's just like testing things out. If it works, I keep it and I use it again. If it doesn't, I just drop it, because there's going to be another tool out tomorrow, basically. And then the other thing is like the more, if the impact that this is going to have in the short term, at least, is make us faster and help us get to the core insights faster, then let's use them, because the only way to really kind of get, I feel like there's something really powerful about repetition and just seeing more. That's truly what experience is. And that's something that like AI doesn't quite have yet. And so as a human, like the more reps that you see, the more times that you do the analysis, like the easier and faster you'll be able to pick up on the things that truly matter in terms of that business impact. So I think it's just like, just try it all out. See what works and drop what doesn't.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's definitely very insightful, because like you say, I think we are still at this space where, you know, we have some tools, but I don't think we know the final the ideal workflow, the workflow of the future yet. Rahul, is there anything to that you want to add?
Nothing much to add, to be honest. The only thing I would maybe double down on is what I think Ali and Emad said. I think learning is going to be really critical when like parts of the coding work, whether it's SQL, Python, or something else, kind of goes away. Your iteration cycle gets quicker. You can do 10 things, one doing one thing. So like kind of that mentality of being more of an like architect and figuring out what 50 things can you try out becomes really, really critical, right? So I think that's the biggest thing in my head.
Great. Thanks. I think we have about like 10 minutes left, so I just want to open it up to our audience. Do you have any questions, anything that you want to ask our panelists right now? You can either put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question live. Maybe just a little bit of a question for our audience, like what made you interested in this discussion that we have today? How many of you are in the data space? You can just enter it in the chat as well. Like, are you a data professional, or are you a company trying to implement AI within your data team?
Pam, maybe your participants are generated by AI.
Yes, yes. I guess since we have 10 more minutes left, I guess one question is from where we are today, do you see any of the current solutions being the winner in the future? So, you know, like you have the foundational models or tools like OpenAI, cloud and whatnot, and we have a bunch of application layers on top of that. Do you predict, or do you see one of them being like in the future this will be the winner, and what that would be like?
I can just jump in and say that in terms of the overall foundational models and things, I think eventually at least some set of open source models that are being widely used gonna survive this trend, because if you remember, go back a couple of years ago, companies were producing web servers, and then at some point everyone will start using like the open source Apache web servers, and so all of the components of the internet infrastructure now are like open source projects that are adaptable and people can build on top of them. So that's one aspect. A lot of these frameworks, in my experience, like LangChain, you know, Crew AI, Llama Index, all of these things, they are really great when you do prototyping and when you do want to quickly get things off the ground. But if you want to use a specific use case, I think in many cases it's actually you ended up building a subset of minimal things that really work well on top of either localized, fine-tuned open source LLM, or if you interact with this commercial service. So in that sense, I'm not sure these so many frameworks out there, all of them gonna survive. I think 90% of them gonna disappear. A couple of them gonna be the predominant, but at least so far my experience has been they're great for doing quick prototyping, getting an idea how you can put together something, an agentic RAG system or something. But at the end of the day, when you want to build your system for production, you may ended up do all the abstractions with less of these bells and whistles that they have, because sometimes they have come so convoluted because they want to accommodate everything, working with all models and all modalities and everything.
Thanks for
Yeah, I
sharing.
think we're seeing a lot of, and we will continue to see a lot of consolidation, specifically in sort of like the data analytics and BI side of things. There's just so many point solutions as opposed to, kind of like something that takes you like throughout the whole process, kind of like end to end. That I don't think that things have kind of stabilized or that we're close to that. The other thing that's kind of interesting is I was looking at kind of the early days of the cloud, and the majority of, I guess, like on the orchestration side of things, the things that stuck weren't necessarily the first things that came out. It was sort of like once a couple of years had gone by, and some of the more like, I guess, user-facing applications or businesses kind of grew to that next phase or started scaling. And that's when like the real frameworks that ended up sticking around were born. So I just think it's too early to tell. I wish I could say like, I think this is, other than the building block of the foundational model for sure, but everything else is kind of a little bit TBD.
Yeah, we're still early, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess we have some questions from the audience, so I'm just gonna read it out for our panelists here. I think the first one is from Elliot. Do you want to ask it live, Elliot, or you want me to read the question? Or okay. So the question is, how do you see big data incumbents with solid distribution competing with AI data startups? Like we've seen them like Databricks, Looker, BigQuery put a lot of resources into building these tools out. How can startup win? I think Rahul, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great. Thanks for the question. So yeah, I would say like if you are going like super general and just building like a foundation model for data, it's going to be really hard, right? I mean, we integrate with a lot of these, like whether it's Claude, OpenAI, a bit of Mistral. But I think from a startup standpoint, what's critical is that you're focusing on a use case and a specific part of the problem, right? So for us, again, we're inside the specific spreadsheet. We're looking to kind of like own that kind of modality. How do you kind of pull data and think about it from a cell by cell level? And also then how can you kind of like update your semantic layer and kind of make everything work? Another really good example of this on the end side is people like Devin, right? So like you may have OpenAI or Claude even pull in agentic mechanisms into their foundation layer, but the really specific use case around doing diffs, updating Git, that could very easily be a startup which kind of uses all those tools to build a really specific solution for a really specific use case. Yeah.
Alejandra, do you want to add to that of like when you are investing on startup, how do you evaluate them against the bigger incumbents and the odds of being successful?
Totally. So I think what Rahul said in terms of you're focusing on a very specific problem, and it's almost like a specific part of the problem, and there's just like you're incredibly focused in so many different ways. Plus you're lean, you're fast, and honestly, like you don't necessarily have like a reputation to account for, it's like when, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that we can talk about what happened with Google and OpenAI. And I can't remember who at OpenAI kept saying, like, they woke up every morning thinking, holy crap, like Google is gonna deploy what we've been working on and they're gonna beat us. And then they never did, because obviously like the stakes are that much higher. Whereas as a startup, you can kind of just go and do it. And hey, you can break things, and obviously that has some certain connotations to it, but you can just move at a much faster speed, and the risk is just not that high. The stakes are not that high. In terms of like investment theses, I think what is different about this time around is the incumbents are smart. They're big. It's very sophisticated incumbents if we're talking about kind of if you're going up against Google or Microsoft or whatever. But then there are other pockets in which we're talking about companies that haven't really updated themselves in decades. Like, we in terms of Xometry, I'm not talking about Xometry in particular, but if you're building something like software for hardware, manufacturing, logistics, we're talking about companies that haven't really done much more than just, put out a faster backend in the last 20 to 30 years. And so there's a much bigger delta. And hence, like, you can get almost like leapfrog, kind of like the last wave of technology. The other thing that we're looking at is companies that have really that are innovating not just on the it's not just like a tech innovation, but they also maybe have a really innovative interface or just like a really interesting, compelling new way of interacting with the user. Or maybe if there's like a business model conflict where the startup can get ahead and the incumbent would have to cannibalize their own business model if they wanted to get ahead like that. Like those are more like market dynamics. But I think there are many, like, yes, the incumbents are tough, but at the same time, there are always so many opportunities as a startup. So we're still investing.
Great to hear. And I guess we have time for one last question. This question is from Hadvik. And the question is, what new features would you like Cloud or ChatGPT to release as a data analytics expert? So I guess like they just have structural output coming out. Emad mentioned that, and that was great. But like, what kind of like wish list? Like, what do you wish they already have built?
Omkar knows the best, I think.
Yes.
Hard to say. Like, I mean, I would definitely want it to solve some of the rote use cases, like maybe summarizing dashboards or summarizing these weekly reports, those kind of things. It's in the realm of what is possible pretty soon. And it also, for example, like creating slides. I think I would love for ChatGPT Cloud to do that because I personally don't enjoy these things. Some people are very good at it, but I think that is one thing where translating the data and the insights to make it much more consumable by the users of various kinds. I think that's where model can help. That would be my favorite feature if they launched one.
Rahul, any wish list from you?
Yeah, so this is probably a deep kind of feature, or maybe just like how the foundational model should change, and it will come, but like chain of thought. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing and a lot of people are doing right now is it's not super good at reasoning, right? You have to kind of like coach it to reason well. But I think that will come where they will like embed. And again, I think it has to be kind of at the foundation model layer. I think there may still be some chain of thought post that, but I think that will be, especially for the data analytics and data science world, that will be, I think, one of the biggest kind of breakthroughs, because a lot of data science work, you go to a data scientist, they have to run through like many hypotheses, kind of iterate kind of through them. And there's a big part of like, what are the right steps I take in the right order? And it kind of varies sometimes per question. So I think that kind of chain of thought structure, embedding part of it in will help a ton.
Emad, Alejandra, any thought from you?
I mean, one thing I love to see that happens is that some kind of, it can be a metadata or something that shows the chain of verification, the veracity of the statement that is produced. For example, let's say it's produced a report, but you doubt it, you can click and you see that where the data, so there is like a signature, let's say type of a hash or something that shows you how the model, where the model got the data, where is the source, and how it is distilled for investigation and verification. So that's give us confidence in using these models, but I don't know when we will get there.
Yeah, I think for me, again, given the job that I have and given that there isn't, I mean, I'm talking to companies that like don't exist. So if there's no company, there's no data. But we do capture a lot of data over time, obviously, and like a lot of it is completely unstructured, plus everyone takes notes differently. So I think the like better reasoning capabilities would be incredibly helpful, because we are currently building a lot of stuff for conducting a faster due diligence process, for just kind of making sure that we're always looking at all the different components of not just a generic startup, but again, like this very specific thing. And it's okay, but I think it will get better as, you know, that kind of deeper multi-step reasoning capabilities improve. It's just going to make a world of a difference. So I'm excited for that day.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I think for me, as we're thinking about wish list, I wish it has some kind of like collaborative thing. Like right now, it's kind of like you chat to it, you have the outcome. But if you want to share the outcome with someone, you kind of like you need to export it or something, and it's kind of hard to like, hey, add someone else to that conversation, and they can ask the same questions in the same context there. So I think for me that would be really wonderful if that will become available, which I think it will. But yeah, we're at time, and thank you so much, all our wonderful panelists and everyone who has asked questions and stay with us for the whole hour. Yeah, I'm excited about what the future will be, and thanks for sharing your insights and you know, projection about the future and what we can do in that new world. I have recorded this session as well, so I will also send it to all of you so that you have that as well to reflect back on. But thank you again, great discussion, and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a
Great
good
to
one.
meet you.
Bye.